We don't plan for our future because we often believe that bad things are what happen to other people until one day they happen to us. But what if there was a way to prepare better? My guest today, Vicky Jones, is going to be explaining about exactly that. My guest is Vicky Jones, founder of Ourlives. She's a mum of two and somebody who spent 25 years in the thick of health and social care, from frontline support worker to director. After losing her dad suddenly at the age of 20, when he was only 44, when Vicky reached the same age, she hit a crossroads in life. She was diagnosed with ADHD, gave up drinking, and decided to do something about a painful pattern she'd seen for decades. People falling through the cracks simply because they didn't know what was coming. And so she created Ourlives, a digital platform that helps people navigate the care system, plan for the future, and reduce stress before a crisis hits. Her new tool, the Life Audit, gives people a personalised snapshot of how prepared they really are and what they can do about it. This isn't just another tick box list. It's about self-care with foresight, empathy with your future self, and challenging the denial that keeps many of us so unprepared until it's too late. So Vicky, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Andy. It's an absolute pleasure to be here with you today.
So in the introduction there, I shared that it was the age of 45. Unfortunately, your dad passed away, and that was a real turning point for you, right? Can you take us back to that moment and what shifted for you emotionally or mentally?
So I was 20 years old, and I was doing so I was doing what youngsters do, and fit and healthy, very normal, average, if you like. And there was a knock at the door, and my dad had passed away very, very suddenly and unexpectedly. And I had been, in all honesty, I kind of drifted around, living my best life with no focus, no direction, very free-spirited, if you like. But that moment consolidated a lot for me. And it was that I felt like I'd been let into a secret, that bad things can happen to people very unexpectedly. And that kind of sat with me for my whole adult life. I went off travelling and came back, and I ended up working in social care. And I think that was very much influenced by my dad's passing and seeing the difficulties that brought and having that understanding about how life can challenge you. And I always felt that I would like to do something about that. And then I think as I've carried that through, coming up to and approaching the age that my dad died, I'd always felt like there was this little bit of a curse, and that was pivotal. And I thought, right, I need to get my act together now and put together all the things that I've been doing over the last 20 years and really start to make a difference. Because for me, getting past the age that my dad lived past, to me, every moment of that was a gift from that moment onwards. So I felt like I had to do something purposeful with it.
Yeah. So obviously you mentioned you were in the care industry for sort of 25 years. You're doing well in that world. So what made you step away from the system to try and change it a little bit from the outside?
I think for me, there's a lot of frustration, and you know as well as I do, Andy, how challenging it is in the care industry right now, with the vacancies, the lack of funding. But also, I think for me, I started off as a frontline worker. I worked directly with people, and I love working with people, albeit it can be quite frustrating and quite challenging, as I'm sure you'll agree. So then I worked my way up because I thought, right, okay, I'm working with people, but I can't make the decisions that are really going to influence that. So I worked my way up to director. And then even that somehow was not enough. So I thought, what do I need to do to prevent people from having to come into services? And for me, it was telling people, or spreading the word, or however you'd like to describe that, is getting people more prepared for the parts of life where they're going to need services. Because I think that there's this preconceived idea that when you come to services, they're like this magic bullet, this magic wand that will sort out your problems for you. And we know that they're not. So for me, it was, how do I educate people and support people in a way that means they're prepared and therefore they don't need to rely on services so much when the time comes.
I think that is a challenge, isn't it? We don't do a lot of preparation as far as what's going to happen in later life. And I think there is this assumption that once I reach that age, then it'll just be taken care of for me. Social services will step in, or I'll go into the home and they'll manage it. And as you recognise, that's just not the case.
It really isn't the case. And I think, and I know we've spoken about this previously, Andy, is people discount their future selves. And that is a huge, huge challenge because, again, I'm no fun at parties, as I'm sure you're no fun at parties either, because we say to people, actually, have you thought about this will happen to you as you're older? And they don't, because let's be honest, who wants to think about the bad things that are going to happen in their future? I started a TikTok again. I'm probably way too old and it probably embarrasses my kids no end. And I do very short videos saying, have you got lasting power of attorney? Have you got this? And my comment section is full of wonderful, wonderful people. But the comments are, I got this when this thing happened to me. So it's always precluded by a significant event happening. And what I'm really, really passionate about is to find a way to support people before the bad things happened.
Yeah, it should almost be publicised, shouldn't it? You know, when you, a bit like, I've never had the call, or I think it's 45 now, the call from the doctors to get your MOT that you get at 45 years of age. But I kind of feel that should also be the age, you should be starting to look at your pension and that stuff, but also looking at LPA, looking at all of these factors, preparing, making sure you've got your will, which you usually have to if you're buying a house and stuff. But yeah.
100%. And the stats tell us this as well. So if we talk about advanced directives, only 3% of the UK population has an advanced directive. Yet if you speak to anybody, they'll say, oh, I would never want to be kept alive under X, Y, and Z circumstances. My family know this. And you're like, well, actually, they may know it. That doesn't mean a fig to anybody, to be quite honest, unless it's written down in a very specific way. People, less than 50% of the population have a will in place. But they're under the assumption that, oh, my kids would get this. Actually, depending on your circumstances, it's not the case. So I think you're absolutely right. There should be almost this life MOT that we get at this point. And that's really what we're trying to do, is trying to get people to have that life MOT and support them through the next part.
So that kind of leads into this next question. So as you just said there, so many people seem to wait until crisis hits to think about their care, money, and their health quite often as well. Why do we find it so hard to prepare in advance? And how do you think that has a knock-on effect of consequences?
I think there's a few things. I think we see people things happening in terms of otherness. Things happen to other people. I also think there's an element of, if people think about it, they feel like they're wishing it upon themselves, which I can understand. It's a completely human way to feel and to think. But actually, having spent what feels like 100 years in social care, they do actually happen to you. And I think it's really challenging to get people to understand that. And I actually put it out on TikTok and ask people, why do you tell me why we're not thinking? There was a wonderful lady who was talking about a research piece that was done that said when people were shown an age-progressed photograph of themselves, they invested more in their pensions. I think their pension contributions went up by 35%, which I found really fascinating. But I think we struggle to see our future selves because we're very much living in the present. So, but if you have any answers, Andy, I am all ears.
Well, I suppose it's the pain of future thinking, isn't it? That, it's the human beings are really good at looking at our horizons sometimes, but definitely more around the positive or what we want to achieve rather than necessarily. I mean, most people spend more time planning their holiday than they do their life. Massively common. I think the point you made there was really interesting as well, of that almost wishing it on. It's like the kind of don't tempt fate. Don't, the touching wood hopefully will never happen to me, but touching wood doesn't actually work. So, and saying something doesn't increase the likelihood of it happening or not happening. But I think it's the head in the sand, isn't it? It's a little bit of denial. It's a little bit of almost acceptance of grief, of what they might, their own mortality. They're starting to, that grieving process before they even get there, rather than looking at it as a kind of positive journey. They're looking at it as a kind of a negative thing to ignore.
I completely agree. And I think there is a difficulty around reframing that into something positive, because it's a huge obstacle of the human condition to overcome that. I also think as well is we're living very much in the present, and I'm having to put time aside and resource aside. And also, I think there's a huge element of people just don't know where to start and what to start thinking about, which is problematic because you think, okay, what will happen to me when I'm older? And as things change, what then do I need to start thinking about? Because we all have our own particular skill set. And if you're working in a particular sector, you're working in retail, you're working in hospitality, you don't know. And I think what we as professionals sometimes are very guilty of is assuming that other people understand how things work. And they don't, because why would they? Why would they? What is the incentive to understand what your future life will look like and what support mechanisms are out there? So I think we have to look inward as professionals to say, how do we educate people and how do we combat this?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's it. Unless you start seeking the information, the information doesn't come to you. It should almost be hey, you've reached your 40s. Here's a list of things maybe you want to look into now. Because if you don't know what you don't know. So they're not going to ask the questions if they don't know what the questions are.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Sorry,
we've created a life audit. So
that's my next question. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the life audit. So what we've done is put together, because hindsight is 2020, and we have the hindsight, and we just want to share that around. It's a life audit that people can complete, and it will look at each aspect of somebody's life and give you a score, essentially, to say you're doing great in this area. So it covers things like your heart health, dementia risk, because I know dementia is horrific and scary, but there's actually a lot of lifestyle factors that you can do now. Very small changes that will have a significant impact later. Future planning, emergency planning. So it covers all those and gives you a score, and then gives you options then with what you do with that. So yeah.
Is that like a free resource, or people can kind of find that and then link to you guys?
It is a free resource that'll be published on the website, which we can link to you guys. And then as a result of that, because what I thought, it's no good telling everybody without offering something then to help people. There'll be invites to free events. So you can attend whichever one suit, whatever score you've got, you can come along. You can come to one, you can come to 6 of them. And it's to give people an overview of, okay, these are some of the things that you can do to improve this score. You can retake the audit if you liked in 12 months' time. So it gives you something really tangible rather than just say, go and get an LPA. It's really looking at your life and the things that are pertinent to you as an individual.
Yeah, that's good. Can you give me some examples of the kind of things that people really tend to overlook that end up causing huge stress later on?
I'm going to say, and this is probably the really hot topic, is not wills, because in all honesty, as horrible as it sounds, you're dead. To some degree, it's no longer your problem. It is the lasting power of attorney. I was talking to a lady in the bank the other day. I'd gone in with my mum for something, and she said the amount of stressed out relatives we get in weekly, sometimes daily, because I want to do this on my mum, my father's bank account. And we have to explain to them, just because you're related to them doesn't mean you can access it. So the lasting power of attorney, and this one's very specifically around finance, comes in 2 ways. One, you need one for yourself, so that other people, even if you're incapacitated for a period of week, the world doesn't stop and bills still need paying. But actually, in terms of people at our age, and because I know we're the same age, Andy, we're in that sandwich part where you've got your parents to start looking after while simultaneously looking after children. So it's those additional pressures on both sides, and having something like a lasting power of attorney for your parents is really, really beneficial, because it's just another stress that is taken away from dealing with illness or other significant life events. So I would say the lasting power of attorney for finance is a must. For health and well-being, also probably a very, very close second.
Yeah, I think there's a common misconception, isn't there, as far as, next of kin being a kind of a thing that it's just not as important as people think it is as far as next of kin's concerned. That LPA is what it's all about when it comes to the law. And to then go to the process afterwards to try and get deputisation is actually a long, slow, painful process sometimes.
And expensive. And I don't think people realise the financial and emotional implications of not having this in place. So while it might feel like a bit of a dry task, none of us, I every time I pay a bill, I just think, I don't enjoy spending money on this. Surely there's more to adulthood than spending money on things I don't particularly want. But actually, looking longer term, the money that you will have to spend and the stress that you have to, and the time you will have to put into that, it's a quicker and easier thing to get it done and out of the way to take you forward. So, yeah.
Yeah, excellent. I know that one of your aims is really to try and raise awareness in people of our age, isn't it? As far as, the steps we could be taking now. It isn't waiting until what you might perceive as the right time. I think sometimes bringing that forward a little bit is quite beneficial. So what's one thing that somebody in their 30s, 40s or 50s should be doing right now to reduce their future care burden or stress?
I think for me, and this is again, very personal to each individual, so I'm going to make quite a blanket statement, is before you do anything, start having conversations. Now, I know that people find this difficult because who do you have conversations with and what do you have them about? Well, first of all, who are you likely to be caring for in the future, or who is likely to provide care for you? And then it's having those really honest conversations about what it is, how they would like to be cared for, the financial situation, the living arrangements. There's a lot of things that you can talk about now that give you an idea. But then to caveat that with, that's the first step, and then getting them put down in a legal format, because the conversations are the precursor to having them formalised. And once they're formalised, that's great. That's a whole different thing. And I know that people in their 30s may feel that they're too young. So to kind of come full circle to where we started is, my dad passed away in his early 40s. So we know that there's no time like the present to get these things done. So have conversations, as difficult as they may be.
I think it's I've been having some conversations recently with my family who are very resistant to kind of moving forwards and putting things in place, and I think they are very much of that mindset that it's something that happens to other people rather than themselves. And I think the misunderstanding particularly is the way that capacity, for instance, is affected. So I think most people, when they're thinking about capacity related to LPAs, their only thought then is dementia. And then their only thought with dementia is that, well, that's a slow progression. So I'll have time once I find out about that diagnosis to then put those things in place, which it just isn't right, is it?
It's not right at all. And capacity is one of those words that's thrown around. And again, I think perhaps as professionals are guilty of talking about capacity in a very black and white way, when really capacity is fluctuating. So if you're, God forbid, hit by a bus and you're knocked out and you're unconscious for a week, you have in effect lost capacity for a week. And then you can regain full capacity. And capacity isn't one thing or another as well. It's not completely losing the ability to make decisions. You may be able to decide what you want for breakfast, what clothes you would like to wear, but then you couldn't make complex decisions around investments or complex decisions around your own healthcare. So it's very, very nuanced. And I think when we just use the term capacity, I think that's very confusing for people, because you're absolutely right in what you said, is people think dementia and it's slow progressing in some cases, and then they've lost capacity, but that's not it. On the other side to it is, I think people feel that their choices will be taken away, particularly around sort of LPAs for health and care. But they do have to consider what the individual has wanted and has talked about and has had those conversations. Again, it goes back to those conversations. It isn't just a case of what somebody else thinks is best for you. It's around whether it's your faith or your background or your beliefs, everything like that is taken into consideration. So I don't think enough people know that, which is quite frustrating.
And it's an interesting point you just made there, as far as that maybe there is a fear around, well, I don't want anybody else making my decisions, but it's kind of that choice now to control who is going to make that decision for you, because either it's going to be somebody you know and trust and you've decided, or it will be a social worker or a doctor.
That's it. Somebody,
and that's
you absolutely, you've hit the nail on the head. And it's around, you can have somebody that you love, or somebody who you know would be looking out for your best interests, because this is what it comes down to, best interests. Or you can have a complete stranger who doesn't know you, who doesn't understand you and doesn't understand the way you want to live. They are the two choices should it come to it. And I know which one I would prefer. Yes.
Absolutely. And I suppose that's maybe a choice of some, that some people would actually prefer it to be somebody they don't know that was impartial and stuff like that. Because I should imagine there's some challenges there as far as things like LPA, isn't there? As far as, I think somebody was asking this question in a group I was in recently, like, but I've got more than one child. So who should do it? And obviously most people don't know that you can have multiple people as far as being able to. I think, is it only two? I'm not 100% sure on that, to be fair, but you can have multiple people.
More than that. What I would say is it's very much horses for courses, because you will have multiple children, and I know from my children who almost definitely won't listen to this, is one I would trust with the finances, one I probably would think twice before doing that. One, I would probably say, yes, you can make decisions about the care. The other one, perhaps not so much. And I think that's the conversation that we need to have, is it's picking the right skill set for the task at hand. And I've done a post recently about who you pick as your LPA for finance is have a look at how they manage their own finances, and would you want them managing yours? Because that's huge. Yeah, if they can't manage their own money, definitely. They won't be managing yours appropriately. But I think it's all these things that actually people need to talk through, because it's rather than us just say, you need to get this and dropping it at that, actually come and talk to us, come and talk through what your challenges are, how to have those difficult conversations. Because I think that is a more supportive way of getting the message out, rather than just saying, you all need to do this, otherwise the consequences will be horrible. We need to be able to facilitate that in a very positive way.
Have you noticed a difference between people who actually work in the care system and those who don't when it comes to planning their own future at all?
Yes. Yes. I think people who work in, what I found is particularly those who work in elderly care and those who work in emergency care, whether it's health or social care or the both, is they are probably as aware as we are of how things can change in the blink of an eye, and they're hyper conscious of it. I spoke to somebody the other week who said, I went and did a placement in elderly care, and by the end of the week I had my advance decision, my lasting power of attorney. I had everything in place from 1 week in elderly care. And I think that's how it gets you. And I think it's very easy to be complacent because we are surrounded by it day in, day out. This is our bread and butter, and we've done this for over 20 years. To think that everybody should know this. And again, it's that, but they don't. And it's pulling yourself out of that and trying to put yourself in the shoes of people who aren't exposed to this daily, I think is really, really important.
Yeah, 100%. So if you could speak directly to someone who's, let's say, an unpaid caregiver right now, perhaps juggling kids, parents and work, what would you want them to hear? What would you want them to know?
You're not alone. There are lots and lots of people already out there caring, but there is no time like the present to get things into place. Even now, even if you've been caregiving for quite a significant amount of time, is look at what you can get in place legally, but also, again, and I'm going to bring that up again, is have conversations. Because what we'll do now is if you do come into unpaid carer services, we'll look at the assets you already have. And actually, sometimes you can avoid coming into services and get caught up in being assessed and so on, is looking at who you have available to you, whether that's siblings or somebody else who live further afield. We're all online now. There are things that other people could do to reduce the burden on yourself by passing that over. So I think that network within your own life, and then get things in place. And also find a supportive community. Now, whether that's Ourlives community, there's some wonderful carer organisations out there. It's just feeling not alone can really, really make such a difference to how you're able to manage and process caring, because it's very difficult, particularly if you are in that sort of sandwich generation. And if you don't mind me saying, the other thing that I think is really important is, and what we try to do at Ourlives, is look at the whole person. Because I think there's a lot of niche services. And what happens then is people are travelling around across the internet, and it's looking at a very specific set of circumstances, and that's the support agency for that. But it doesn't consider the rest of the person. I think what we're trying to do is recognise, a lot of, particularly women my age, and menopausal, they're also caring. So there's a whole host of issues. And we can't fit people into these little niches. And what I do say in carer services in particular is carers are just people, and we need to look at them as such rather than they are carers and that is their primary identifying sort of factor. It isn't. They are just people, and this is one of the areas that they need support in.
Have you ever encountered an adult or child's behaviour that has felt difficult, overwhelming, or challenging? Have you sometimes felt at a loss of what to do, or know that you didn't handle it quite right? People are complex and unpredictable, and their behaviour can be like the weather. We've all made the mistake of looking out the window and feeling safe to wear shorts, but 5 minutes later wishing for an umbrella. What if, like a weatherman, you understood how humidity, temperature and pressure all come together to cause the weather, allowing you to better prepare, predict and respond, and prevent ever having a picnic ruined by a thunderstorm ever again? My book, called Targeting the Positive with Behaviours that Challenge, helps you to become the weatherman of behaviour. It provides you with a toolkit to increase competency, confidence, resilience and empathy, so you feel more assured about how to respond to distressed or dysregulated behaviours in others, including those affected by trauma, mental health, neurodiversity, learning disabilities or dementia. Build better connections, achieve de-escalation and improve outcomes for yourself and those you engage with my celebrated 6-stage target model, a step-by-step process to reduce distress for everyone. Discover my empowering, person-centered guide in Targeting the Positive, written by me, Andy Baker, available from online bookstores worldwide. Find a link in the description and order today. Just kind of thinking, like, changing societally and our mindset. Obviously, this is something that you're really passionate about. Do you think there should be more kind of almost education within schools for children about future planning?
I do think there is. And I think, but what we're seeing, I think progress is slow. I attended a parents' evening and realised they were still doing the same GCSE workbooks that we were doing, and that was 3 lifetimes ago now. And I think we do place a lot of emphasis on schools. I think perhaps for me more it's around societal change rather than expecting more and more from our education system, which is already burdened quite heavily. I think if I had a magic wand, there would be a school for adulting, because I think education stops at that 16 to 18 period, possibly with people going to university, but it's very skill specific and not life specific. We should have like a cycling proficiency for adults, or, your swimming badges. Let's have a future planning swimming badge. I really think that there has to be something that educates people beyond that. You get to adulthood and then it's like you're a baby adult, but there's no education that follows that. So yeah, I really do think it would be, there needs to be something. And I love your idea about the MOT when you get to a certain age. That's the cracking idea.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think, we'll have to start kind of petition the government to do something about that and kind of go, hey, let's send out at this age, hey, here's what you should be doing to plan your future now. Because I think most people they're just getting on with their lives. They're just a little bit oblivious to it, stuck in the rut of what they're doing sometimes. Yeah. And this is one of the things, obviously, you've had this major life change. I know there's some things that, I mentioned in the introduction related to, you've been very open about sobriety and about ADHD and things like that, and to launch your business. What's helped you to kind of stay motivated with changes and overcoming this difficulties when the roads felt hard or uncertain?
Being able to genuinely believe that I can make a difference is huge for me, and that kind of keeps that focus. I think I was diagnosed with ADHD about just over 2 years ago. I think anybody who's ever had more than a 2-minute conversation with me would have said it was fairly obvious, but there we go. And I think that was pivotal because, again, I was coming up to the age that when my dad passed away, so it was kind of a very emotionally charged time for me, and it really it brings with it a lot of thinking. And then I stopped drinking because I used to love a drink, absolutely loved it. But actually something has to give. And drinking wasn't doing me any good. And I think it's really difficult because actually sometimes it's really, quite frankly, quite boring, and it's not the wild times. But actually what I've got now has replaced it and sort of gone over and above in terms of drive, motivation, clarity as well. And that's not to say that building something isn't difficult, because it is difficult. It's so difficult. And there are days where I just think, what am I doing? Why have I done this? And then I remember it's because I know that it can make a difference. And sometimes just getting like messages on TikTok from people and said, oh, I've done this because I saw your video and I've sat down with my mum and had some conversations. That's hugely, hugely motivating. And I love it. And I'll be honest, as somebody with raging ADHD, those little dopamine hits are so addictive. And every little win is a dopamine hit. So I'm here for that.
Absolutely. And it sounds like you found a real vision and mission, a real why to why you started doing this new project and moving on this new stage in your life. Which, and you say the little moments of appreciation. I find the same with the podcast and stuff. We just got an amazing email the other day just from somebody who'd listened to an episode and it had really impacted them and they sent some stuff through. So I get that. I relate to that 100%. That it gives a meaning through the hard times, doesn't it? One of the things you've spoken about is empathy with your future self, which I think it ties into everything that you're doing for yourself as well as for what you're trying to provide for other people. How does that look like in your own life, and how do you feel it should look like in other people's?
I think it's thinking about, and it's a concept that I love, is future empathy with your future self. And what I can liken this to on a very small scale is, when you're driving home after you've been somewhere and your fuel light is on empty and you think, oh, I'll do that in the morning. And you know perfectly well you are not going to do that in the morning, and you're going to miss your alarm, and you're going to trip over the dog, and you're going to be late for work tomorrow. So what I always say to myself, and this is, again, it's on a very sort of micro, it's a little bit of a glib statement, is put the fuel in when you've thought about it. Do it now, because tomorrow morning will just be a catalogue of errors otherwise. So it can be, empathy for your future self can be as small as that. Going to the gym now, so that because I know that as a middle-aged woman, falls increase because of hormonal changes, differences, and obviously as we age. Going to the gym now is empathy with your future self, even in the days where you're feeling like a sweaty mess and you don't want to do it and you're tired. Empathy for your future self, because you will look back and you will be glad that you did those things. So paperwork, everything we're about is understanding what will happen to people and saying, if you do this now, your future self will 100% thank you for it. Yeah.
I really like that. I like that concept. And it's something that, Yeah, I've been subconsciously doing, I suppose, as far as, but, and I know exactly, but the petrol one was a great example where I've definitely done exactly that, where I've looked again, I'll do it in the morning, but I know full well, it will stress you out in the morning. You'll end up having to rush around to get it. You'll forget about it until the last moment. So yeah, I love that analogy. And I think that's hard for people, isn't it? It's that future thinking, reflecting back, going, how will I feel about this if something goes wrong? How would I feel? Like I say, going to the gym's a prime example. You know, I'll regret it in a week's time, looking back, going, why didn't I go to the gym last week? But it's in that moment you have to kind of focus on that why, that future self a little bit. Love that. So tell us a little bit more about Ourlives and what your main goal is, what you want to achieve with Ourlives.
So I think for me, working in this sector for so many years and having built up such an amazing network of people, whether it's social workers, solicitors, GPs, we've got this amazing network, all with this wealth of experience and knowledge. And working in individual services is great, but they're reaching people when they hit crisis. And as has been the theme for this episode, is it's really trying to get people before those things happen. So I had this brainwave. I'd like to create a school for adults, but of course that costs billions of pounds, and I don't have billions of pounds. But what I can do is bring together all the knowledge and experience of all those people. And I needed to find a way to consolidate all of that and make it really accessible for people. So I've been building Ourlives for a couple of years now. And there's a couple of parts to it. So the first part is community, and that community is made up of individuals who wouldn't normally access services. And again, we don't niche down, so it's not for caregivers, it's not for women, it's for anyone over the age of 40, midlife, who just wants to live better now and live better in the future. So there's the community element, there's the education element as well. So we've got live Q&A sessions. You can book one-to-one sessions as well. And we'll do sort of a complete overhaul of what you need to do. And it's very personalised, because what works for one person isn't going to work for somebody else. And then there's the other part to it, which is the life admin portal itself. And that is where you can store all your documents. It talks you through how to get them. And then it adds on, and this is a really, really important part for me, is you can add on trusted users. Because it's all well and good having all these documents in place, and that's kind of the third part to all this. But if nobody knows where they are or how to access them in an emergency, they're neither use nor ornament to anybody. So it's with the very sort of admin side of it, where you've got everything all in one place. The education, where you can come and ask us a question. We have live Q&A sessions, one-to-ones, and it's the community. And I think those are the three key elements, where it's a really supportive environment in the way that you need to be supported. And that's what I want to do. I just want people to feel supported before they need to be supported.
Well, it sounds like a pulling together of. So, have you found that these areas that you were looking to create this school for adults, which I love the idea of, and I do think we should have a building for it. We should all go back to school. They were meant to be the best days of our lives, but we didn't appreciate them when we were there.
It's wasted on young, isn't it?
Absolutely. So did you find that all of these different elements are available, but they're all spread out, so you brought them together? Or did you notice there was a real lack in some of these areas across the board generally?
I think there's two parts of that, and you're right about both. I think what happens is when you come into a service, any service, is either condition specific or it's situation specific, and that's great, and they're very knowledgeable and very in-depth. But what I aim to do is Ourlives. It's in the title, it's Ourlives, and we are whole people. Now, I have ADHD. I look after my mum. I have health conditions. I have children. So I'm a whole person, and everybody's very, very individual, but there are some universal truths about all of us. So what I wanted to do is not niche down. So you're a carer, but also you're a menopausal woman, or you're a gentleman who's having a career challenge. So it's being able and having the expertise there where you can come and not have to chase answers across the internet. Because everybody is very specific to their niche. And what we've got is this amazing network. We've got solicitors, we've got financial advisors, dementia specialists, hoarding specialists, funeral directors, social workers. And it really is, ask us a question and we will do the heavy lifting in terms of finding you an answer. And it will be factual and it will be accurate, because much as I love tech and the internet has been a wonderful thing, it's also created its own inherent set of challenges where people will Google something and they may as well be asking Uncle Dave down the pub, because the answers aren't always, there's no way of verifying and checking that those are accurate, particularly if you don't know what questions to ask. So that's what we aim to sort of take away. So it's that one place. And again, the gap, I think, is for people who don't actually need the services at that time. So it's that pre-crisis element, because again, a lot of places you can get help when you're in that situation, but you're not prepared for it. So I think what we'd like to do is take that to be prepared. Whatever life throws at you, we can come and support you with that when the time's right. But also you'll be far better prepared, because we know that when you're better prepared, your outcomes are better. Yeah.
I like that. So it's very a preventative tool rather than waiting to the reaction kind of thing. Yeah. So what do you find the most common kind of, you said about the school for adults, what do you find are the most common topics that people want to connect with?
A lot of it is around caring. And a lot is around their own health, and also future planning. Future planning is probably the biggest element, because people don't know where to start and they don't know how to have the conversations. So it's okay. Well, I spoke to a lady yesterday who said, I'm on my own and I had to drive myself to hospital because there was an 8-hour wait for an ambulance. And it's then working with her to say, okay, so who in your vicinity how can we build this network for you? And again, that was a situation that she'd experienced and wanted to do something about. But I think it's being quite reactive, but also proactive, if that makes sense. It's the ability to react to the situation, but then plan for the next one. So it's the consequences are reduced, if you like.
Yeah, following principle, you react the first time, but then we should be able to put things in place to allow us to respond the next time, essentially, isn't it? Yeah. You said you offer kind of one-to-ones as well. Is that with different kind of area of expertise, or is that with yourself? And what kind of things do they offer in those sessions?
With the life audit, you'll come through and we can do group sessions. So there's the free group sessions for everybody, which are sort of like a very... an overview, if you like, of future planning, emergency planning and so on, that don't go into as much depth. Or you can join Ourlives, and it's a small monthly fee. And then there's weekly check-ins where, again, that's a group environment, or you can book one-to-one sessions with myself or a life advisor. Or we have our trusted partner network. So that's financial advice, legal advice, careers, confidence coaching. So we have that network. So where appropriate, we'll pass people over to within our own support ecosystem. Yeah. So everybody's verified, and and again, it's that trusted, and that's why we use the term trusted partner, because they're people that we've worked with, we've vetted. They really, really, and this was really important to us, it's not just to find experts, but to find experts who know how to connect with people, who have that presence and really work with people on a very human level rather than a business focused level, which I think is really, really important.
When we're looking at as far as from a personal level, obviously we're definitely encouraging people to self-reflect, and that empathy with future self is massively important. What would be your advice to anybody who's looking to open this conversation up with maybe other people in their lives that they feel should be doing the same thing?
Definitely. So I think the first thing is really, really understanding what you want to achieve from the conversation. And that needs to happen before you even start the conversation, because how people can react will vary. Again, I know you mentioned earlier on in the conversation that people in your sort of inner sphere are quite resistant and reluctant. So I think knowing what you want to get out of it and really having an understanding of how people may respond and really preparing for that conversation and giving them facts, because otherwise it can descend into quite a fractious conversation. And I think having resources available to hand over to people so that they can, because it can feel a bit like you've been hijacked. Okay, they want to sit down and talk to me about me getting ill and dying. That's horrendous. So having resources to hand where you can say, okay, you take these away, look through these, and then we'll have a conversation. It's really setting the scene. We've got one of our Ourlives members who said, I sat down with my mum and we had a business meeting. We booked it. So we both sat at opposite sides of the desk and we went through a checklist and had it as a meeting. And then we put our business aside and then we went out and had lunch together afterwards as a completely separate. And I thought, wow, that has really worked well. But it's very planned. And they have the resources to hand, because otherwise it can descend into ifs, buts and maybes because people don't have the right information. So I thought that was really lovely. It was a really great piece of feedback to have.
Yeah, I take it there's other people who are having this problem across the board as well, across the ages, both for themselves and, let's say, partners. It's not just parents and things like that too.
Definitely. And that's the other thing. I know we focus a lot on sort of caring for parents, but caring for partners is also huge. It's a huge element. And people take that for granted, that you and your partner, maybe you're a similar age, will both stay healthy for the same amount of time. And actually, that's not what we see in reality. We see one person's health declining, different financial statuses, and that's when it becomes very, very complicated. So being really clear with your partner is absolutely key, because that brings with it, and this is perhaps a slightly controversial take, is when you have a partner, quite often you have in-laws. And that doubles your likelihood of becoming a carer. And it's having those conversations with your partner, how the burden of care is going to be split across families and not just laid down on one person. And having those conversations early on while everybody's still healthy is very, very important. But again, it's not something that you bring up over Saturday night takeaway. But you probably should.
Yeah, absolutely. If it's more normalised conversation, 100%.
Yeah.
So it's exciting what you're doing with Ourlives, and obviously it's still fairly early stages on, a couple of years into your development, isn't it, as far as this is concerned. So what does success look like for Ourlives?
I think Ourlives is an ever-evolving ecosystem of experts. And whenever a new challenge is presented to us, is to be able to go out with all the confidence to go and find somebody who can then say, we've identified this, we'd like you to join our ecosystem. And it's actually people having the ability to come to us knowing that we're, for want of a better term, a safe pair of hands for whatever life will throw in your general direction. And I think it's just continuing. I think the thing about a lot of companies or businesses, it's growth and it's growth and it's growth. And it's not about that. It's, for me, it's around the quality of what we can provide. And that's really, really important, because without that quality, you can use Google. There's a lot of things you can do. So success is those little messages that you do get. It's those bits of feedback, and long may it continue. Yeah, it's very exciting. Yeah, very rewarding too.
And it sounds like a really positive and worthwhile project to do, I think, to raise awareness in this. And I say, from my personal experience and a little bit of frustration with dealing exactly this, I'll be exploring more into it. So kind of drawing us to a close, what would you love to see in how we approach, as a society maybe, or on an individual basis, how we approach aging, illness and care?
I think we need to start talking about it as a part of life and not as a separate. And I'm going to look to, and there's many other cultures that approach this very differently to how we do. And I think it's probably very specific to sort of white Western culture, where aging and caring for elderly family members, or family and illness is looked at as something separate, whereas a lot of other cultures don't, and it's embedded in life, and it's not this separate issue that we don't talk about. I think that's a huge cultural shift to expect from anybody. And I know the British stiff upper lip and we don't like talking about things. I think, and forgive me for saying this, we need to be far more in touch with our emotions. And actually, as a nation, we need to start being far more emotionally mature, because that is the key to a lot of these things could be avoided by being able to have adult conversations around some quite emotionally charged issues. I think we've got a long way to go, but I think for every single person that we can help to understand how to do that, that's one step closer to making that a reality.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Vicky. And I think the points you were making there is 100% correct. I think, being more open around subjects, particularly around illness, future planning, all those sorts of areas, we do sweep under the carpet a little bit and need to be a little bit more open about them. So I'm loving the work you're doing. So as far as getting in contact with you, obviously we'll share the details of how to find one that I think definitely linking the audit in to the show notes and description would be fantastic for people to be able to kind of utilize that and see maybe where they are in their journey, and where they need to be maybe putting some effort and some asking some questions about at the very least.
Definitely.
Yeah. All right. Well, so thank you so much. Genuinely interesting conversation. I know we're going to be communicating with each other again in the future. So hopefully if anybody's watching this episode and feels that the stuff that Vicky's been talking about and doing on her day-to-day would be worthwhile and beneficial, then please reach out to us or reach out to Vicky directly. And hopefully you'll get that support, community, questions answered, as well as the change that you need. So thank you one last time, Vicky.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
So for those of you watching, please do reach out to us, do like, comment and share this episode if you think there's anybody in your life that could maybe benefit from hearing it. Maybe this is a great way of starting the very conversations that we've been talking about. Thanks.